I realized I haven't played the USS Gearing in a long time. Legendary tier American destroyer, one of the older legendary tier ships. It's been in the game for a while, but it was buffed in both this March 2026 update and then previously in either the October or the November 2025 update. And in 2026, after all of these buffs, Gearing feels like a really good ship, and I found it to be a really enjoyable experience to play. Took it out for a few matches, and this was the best out of the ones that I played. You'll see what I mean as time goes on, but before we really get into the details of the buff, I'll show you the commander build. I am running a commander that not everybody may have. It's Vincent Mordoff, and if you don't have Mordoff, who you can build for guns, which is what we've done on the Gearing, then you could always substitute him for Halsey. The main things you'd be missing out with Halsey over Mordoff is Mordoff's base trait, which at the level I have him reduces the reload time by 5.4%. Halsey doesn't really have an equivalent skill, but he does have the observant range skill, which is, I think, the most important for a gunboat build since it reduces the main battery reload time by 5%. So you do have that going for you. And then Mordoff's unique skill in the fourth row called Sheltered Arms reduces the risk of the main battery being incapacitated as well as the torpedo tubes, both by 75%. Other than that, though, Mordoff has a very similar skill layout to Halsey, and either one would be good for a gunboat build. The guns just won't reload quite as quickly without Mordoff. Anyway, the nature of the buffs as we reverse here into this Delta cap, which is contested by an enemy destroyer. Back in October or November of last year, the buffs were more extensive. Gearing previously only had 2 smokescreen charges, but you can see we had 3, and I didn't even realize this myself until I was playing this very battle and used the first smokescreen, which is not going to happen for a while. I realize, though, that I have 3 of them and not 2, and just the virtue of that fact means you can have a little bit more leeway in deploying these smoke screens than you could previously. By the way, these torpedoes on the Gearing, pretty nice since they have the 16.5 kilometer range. They're never going to run out. We managed to tag the Rhode Island there with one on the bow, and I think we hit the Shimakaze on the way out. We want to not get too close to the Rhode Island, of course, because of the radar, but we may be able to take this cap now, thanks to that. Anyway, the smoke screen, in addition to the number of charges being increased from 2 to 3, we also have an increase in the parameters of the smoke screen. The duration, which is the time that the smoke screen deploys, was increased from 28 to 30 seconds. The total duration of the smoke screen once it's deployed, or the smoke screen dispersion time, was increased from 124 to 130 seconds, and then the cooldown time was reduced from 240 to 200 seconds. And then in this most recent March 2026 update, the HE Alpha on the main battery guns was buffed a little bit. It was previously 2000, which I think was buffed from what it originally was years ago. I just don't remember when, and I could be misremembering that. But now at 2200, it, I think, is, if not the highest HE Alpha on any destroyer at the tier, then close to it. And it means the guns, which were already pretty good on the Gearing, do a lot more damage. You couple that with the torpedoes and their 16.5 kilometer range, I think what you've got here is a pretty good hybrid destroyer. Just take a look at the Shimakaze here, too, for the guns. It's like 2 salvos and he's gone. Even Khabarovsk, which is kind of a scary destroyer to be fighting in any kind of 1v1 with any legendary tier destroyer. I think even Gearing can give Khabarovsk a run for its money now, provided that, well, Khabarovsk isn't really shooting back at us, so maybe it's not a great example. We have to switch to AP on him, of course, because he's got that 50mm plating on the side that will just shatter our newly buffed HE. But, you know, AP's getting a good result. Shimakaze is off the board. That's 1 out of 2 of the enemy DDs down, and then it's just Khabarovsk over here. So we know for certain that the Alpha Cap on the other side of the map is safe from contesting from any destroyer, and we just need to play smart along with our destroyer teammate here. I think both of us will end up doing that. We've lost a battleship and a cruiser. The Reds have still only lost this destroyer. And I think it was the Shimakaze that we sunk that deployed this smoke screen here. It's kind of blocking our line of sight of the Yamato and the Preußen. And still, we don't quite know what happened to Khabarovsk, but both Yamato and Preußen are going to be pushing into this cap. So we need to not be in a position where they're suddenly going to spot us. One thing, speaking of battleships pushing into caps, one thing I did experience while playing the Gearing for a few rounds last night was that there is one, perhaps, problem with it, even after these buffs, that makes it maybe not desirable, but I don't know that it's a problem with the Gearing itself. It might be more of a problem with certain battleships. On this build, the Gearing has a top speed of 37.1 knots, and of course that increases if you use the engine boost. But I had a situation where HMS Incomparable was charging straight at me, probably with his engine boost running, and he managed to catch up to me. Now, I didn't have my own engine boost going, it was on cooldown at the time, so I was just relying on the base speed. But I think the base speed may be slower than HMS Incomparable with its engine boost active, because that guy managed to catch me and sink me. So, not ideal. But other than that, the experience I had playing Gearing was pleasantly surprising. And if you haven't played this ship in a while, after these buffs, I think it does feel really good. We've got Yamato pushing in, we've got Preußen pushing in. Yamato manages to avoid our torpedoes, but not the salvo from the battleship in the Charlie cap that manages to hit his broadside and really take a toll on him. We land at least one torp on the Preußen. Do we get two? I think we do, yeah. There's two against Preußen. Khabarovsk once again shows himself. We've got another smoke screen to go. Prior to these buffs, this would have been our last smoke screen, but we're still going to have one after this. It's really nice. It changes the way that you can play the Gearing and deploy these excellent American smoke screens. The biggest problem was they did last a long time, but you only had two of them. So it felt like if you messed up on one, well, that's 50% of your smoke utility gone, and didn't feel very good. Now you have a little bit more leeway. And also, the AP on Gearing, not to be underestimated. It's pretty good against broadside battleships like that Yamato there. He ultimately goes down to the torpedoes of our friendly destroyer, but you saw some nice results, I think. And we're up to 92,000 damage done. Preußen still in the cap. Also Kaba somewhere. We're going to get out of this smoke screen to try to reacquire vision, especially since Kaba has such terrible detectability. He seems like his engine's broken too. He's kind of stationary. And since he's not broadside to us, the HE is going to hit parts of the ship that it can pen. So we'll just use that, and ultimately, we don't get the kill. There's another fist to go with the one we already had, but it doesn't matter. There's no such thing as kills stealing in this game. There's only kills securing, and both of the enemy DDs have been eliminated, so this game should be a win. I think it does end up turning into a blowout from here. Normally, I don't like to put those on YouTube, but I think this battle shows off the efficacy of the Gearing. It is pretty good in 2026. Anyway, Preußen still sort of in the cap on the border of it. We're going to send some torpedoes the way he was reversing, but it looks like he's got himself off of that island, and he might go past it. So, in order to account for that, we send torpedoes on the left-hand side of that rock. Hopefully, they'll end up hitting. And now we're just going to go back here. I mean, we could be pushing to the other side of the map, but Rhode Island's running away. We haven't been in his radar range at all. We don't want him to go dark either, so partially we want to spot him. And we'd also like to see if maybe we can get his guns on target, but we're going to get distracted a bit by Preußen, and Rhode Island goes down anyway. There's a fire on him. Only 2 fires lit this game, and we shot 143 shells. I suppose that's one thing you could say about the Gearing, is it still has a 5% fire chance, which I think is kind of low by today's standards. But again, the guns and the torpedoes together, we get a couple hits on Preußen, and well, he's going to be well on his way back to port as we go up to 143,000 damage done. These torpedoes are nothing to sneeze at either. They do hit fairly hard. They've got a maximum simulated damage of 16,799, which is maybe not as impressive as some other destroyers at this tier, like Shimakaze, for example, whose torpedoes hit much harder. But at the same time, Gearing's torpedoes have a torpedo detectability range of 1.4, and I think Shima's are 1.7. So they're a little bit stealthier, which means they are theoretically a little bit more difficult to dodge. And for that reason, perhaps they're a little bit scarier if you're a battleship player. Shimakaze torpedoes, I feel like you see coming from a mile away, and as long as you know that they're coming, they're relatively easy to dodge. These things, on the other hand, you see much later, and it gives you a little bit less time to dodge. So, even though they don't hit as hard, I'd be a little bit more worried about stealthier torpedoes if I were a battleship player. Speaking of which, there's only one battleship left alive. It's this Yamato, who I think has probably just been sitting still the entire time. He's decided to push forward, but it's too little too late. I don't even know who he's trying to angle against because he's got, I think, two friendly battleships on his broadside, and he's got his guns pointed in the complete opposite direction. We're just here able to farm him a little bit. Even in open water, we haven't lost any HP really, but doesn't matter. We get a fire on him, and the battle ends with our glorious victory. But here we go. Nice little result in the gearing, 151,000 damage and 3,449 XP. Gearing's a pretty good ship in 2026 despite its age after all these buffs, and it feels really good to play. I certainly don't mind it. In fact, I would do it again. I recommend playing the Gearing if you haven't in a while, because I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by how good it is. It's a really solid destroyer now, in my opinion. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.